Okay, welcome everybody to this sixth journal club of the European Journal of Cardiovascular Nursing. I'm Tini Jaarsma. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of European Journal of Cardiovascular Nursing, and I'm here to do the journal club, and I am joined by Andrew Rideout and Grace Lindsay. Welcome to the journal club.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, so I will explain to our viewers and listeners that we have Grace Lindsay in a little box because she is far away. She is Skyping in actually from Saudi Arabia, and we had some problems with connection. So how we will do it is I will discuss with Andrew the paper, and then Grace will come in with her answers to add to Andrew or to join us with her answers. So welcome both. We will discuss today a paper called Health Locus of Control in Patients Undergoing Coronary Artery Surgery, Changes and Associated Outcomes, a 7-year cohort study. And it's published, it's available online, and we will discuss the paper, and meanwhile we discuss, you can send in questions through the Google Hangout. And if that does not work, or if you think we did not see it, you can also mail them to me. My email address is tini.jaarsma@liu.se, and you can mail it, and then I will check the mail. So I will be the moderator of the discussion and ask questions to Andrew and Grace, and you can add in your questions. In case the questions cannot be answered, because maybe if we lose connections with Grace, we will post your questions and answers on our website later. So let's start now. Yes. So Andrew, first, of course, a very curious question for me is, why did you publish the paper in the European Journal of Cardiovascular Nursing?
I think probably a number of reasons. Obviously, the reputation of the journal. It's well cited and a well reputed journal. So that's an interest. But particularly, we were keen on reaching nurses and working within nursing and through that channel to the wider healthcare teams, because I think that there's messages in this study, particularly for how we deliver nursing care. Although it's about long-term follow-up, there's day-to-day lessons about what we're doing for our patients.
Okay, thank you. And of course, thank you for submitting this great paper. When I was looking at the title, and also when already it came into review, we were intrigued by the 7-year cohort study. And we don't see that so often in our journal, or in, I think, any nursing studies, or not so much in healthcare. So I would like to compliment you for that, but at the same time ask you, what do you think, why don't we see it so often? Is it difficult to do, or?
It is difficult. It's difficult to, I think, recruit people who know that they're going to be followed up over many years. Maybe people don't necessarily want that commitment, but also you have to have a research team who stays around for the duration. And Grace, one of the authors who's on the Skype, started this study all that time ago, and I joined the study much later. So even within our study, we didn't have one team right the way through the duration of the cohort. And I think, to make that sort of commitment and to think that you're going to be around still looking at the same group of patients, still able to do the research over many years is not always feasible with, current situation in funding and universities and healthcare and so on.
And I think we also often don't plan these studies. We don't, if I think about it, like, I would just think like a lot of our papers are a lot of our groups we could follow up, but we sort of often even don't think about it, I think. I don't know if you agree. But.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we tend to think, what's the problem now and how can we address that, and not think about the future. and obviously building that into the ethics approval right at the beginning and say, this isn't a snapshot, this is part of a longitudinal study. It's important. It's easier to do that than to go back. Even within our area, ethics committees have changed, the structures have changed. You may be dealing with a different ethics committee 7 years down the line if you wanted to go back fresh. So to build all this in right at the beginning, good way of planning and thinking ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I just wanted to make the point that the original study was based on a 1-year follow-up as part of a doctoral study program. So in the sense, the scope of 7 years and beyond was not actually formulated until that initial 1-year follow-up. And at that time, it became interesting with the variety in experiences and outcomes patients had, begged the future research questions as what the future would hold for these people. And that really spawned the long-term longitudinal study.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I was just, Andrew touched a little bit on the funding, because I looked at the funding that you say in the paper. There's no funding, at least not for this paper or the data in this paper. So I was just wondering, who did all the work and how did you pay that?
On you go, Grace.
Grace, I'll just come in. There was funding, as I say, it's a long, say 12-year study as it is now. The initial 3-year period was funded as part of a scholarship, and through which I undertook my PhD. The subsequent funding up to 5 years was funded by our Scottish Home and Health Department, and that really funded that review at 7 years. We're writing this up now at 12 years, where the funding has been really acquired through the university as part of my academic position at the university. So we probably haven't formally acknowledged it because it was not external funding from our position. But it has been funded, through the main government scientific funding channels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to add to that, Andrew? Or?
No, I mean, essentially, my I suppose funding came through my university salary. I was seconded to the university to learn about research and do research. And so the university paid me a salary, not specifically for this piece of research, but to have a link between clinical practice and research. And so this was paid really from, well, my time came from my salary from university salary. So it was kind of the routine university funding for me, my day-to-day salary. But obviously they allowed my time to do this. So.
Yeah, clear. Well, now the question from for the Godmark, and she wants to go into the concept of locus of control, and she asked also that other concepts, or so what's the reason why locus of control, and I also want to add, is it used a lot in research in nursing?
I'm sorry, the internet connection dropped a bit there, Tina. I think you were just saying, why did we use locus of control?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think as a concept, as a psychological measure, it's been around for many years. Some of these ideas within psychology go through ups and downs of popularity. Some gain sort of interest within academia or within sort of common ideas, and I think it's true that locus of control now is being picked up more and more by researchers, and is becoming more of a current idea. I think when this study started, it was still maybe in one of the troughs of its interest. I think the benefits to us really is using it is it does allow quantification of some quite subjective measures. So things which are not necessarily picked up well by other psychological measures or tools, and it's a quite quick and simple tool to administer. It's, as we used it, 11 questions which a patient can very, very quickly and readily answer, and it's been very well validated over many, many years. So we know it's reliable in a number of different settings, not just healthcare.
Yeah. And then you
add, if I can, we were looking for a concept of health that would access some degree of attitude or determinants or people's involvement and attitude towards their health and well-being, because we were looking at determinants of outcome.
Yeah, but you in the introduction you make the first a case a little bit like it's something you have as a person, so it's like a stable, how you look at life or how you look at things that happen to your life. Is it out of my control, or is it someone else determines that? And but then you say, well, let's look at if it changes anyway. So what made you think or doubt that locus of control is not a stable feature?
I think we probably thought, because that's what the literature suggested, that locus of control would be stable. It was seen as part of your worldview and part of your psychological character. And then as we started examining the data, we found that actually that wasn't the case. So this was a sort of surprising finding for us, and a new finding. And as we started to see that, we started to explore more about what was going on and how it was changing for individuals, and how that related to other measures of health and well-being. So we hadn't gone in expecting to find locus of control changing. We thought it was going to be a stable domain really, and were surprised by this finding.
Because you now looked in a cardiac population, would you feel that it would be the same if I would have like a hip surgery or an eye surgery, or so because you say something that it's very like a cardiac surgery is really life-threatening situation, or would you just say any surgery or life event can maybe change your locus of control?
I think looking at, again, as I say, this isn't well described in the literature, so I think it's hard to know. Thinking about it, you'd think cardiac surgery is obviously a very frightening event to go through. You're putting your life under the surgeon's knife, very obviously in the way that you're not with eye surgery or hip surgery. Now, some people will respond to that stress differently, I think, and I think to understand more about that, we need to compare different groups of patients. I think that's something which isn't known. You can think from an outsider that possibly cardiac surgery is more stressful and more likely to cause these changes, but we don't know that.
No. And one more thing about this locus of control concept, because I was thinking you could have like this internal view, or I'm responsible, or external. But is it something that, for example, can you have external locus of control for one thing and internal locus of control for another thing? For example, if I would say, well, how I feel, how much symptoms I have, that is in my own control. However, how physically active I am, that's someone else. So if you have an internal locus of control, do you have it with every behavior, or can you have internal and external?
Again, I think the thinking is that this is right across your lifespan. So whether it's about behavior, whether it's about symptoms, whether it's about other aspects of your life. So, for instance, a lot of work's been done in education. So whether you pass your exams or fail your exams, is that your fault or your teacher's fault? I think the expectation is that you'd have a similar internal or external locus of control across all of those fields.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting concept in nursing that if we see the people, you can actually picture a person that you had taken care of. Who would you say, oh well, I cannot do anything about this, or more that yeah, I want to take control.
Yeah,
I think it's a good concept to use. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, we go to the methods because we have some. Sorry.
Grace was just going to make a comment about that.
There is some literature suggesting that there is a situational response, but the health locus of control has been, that particular scale has been developed on a sort of macro level, what people sort of kind of general on a law of averages, how they would react to a particular situation. Now, whether that initial decision or judgment is refined by other circumstances, it still, the authors would claim that inherent characteristic of internal and external is still quite prominent in people's decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether that answers the question. So there is a situational factor, an experiential factor, and we were seeing in our own data shifting of the people moving from internal to external, more in the event of when they're under threat, when they're going through this sort of recovery period of surgery, that there was a shift towards being more internally focused, and this shift on average moved back towards internal control perspectives as people were in a recovery position. So I think our data would support that this phenomenon does change, but it does describe particular reactions to situations and is linked in internal control. People in generally are associated behaviours lead to better outcomes, whether it be health or achievements, etc., whereby external predisposition tends to lead to less favourable outcomes.
Okay, thank you. I think we move to, because I get some questions about the methods and the results, so I would like to move to some very concrete questions. So if I have some a question about the method, is that who administered the questionnaires in the study?
Myself, the researcher.
Okay, yeah. And another question is from Italy, these questions come from the group in Italy, is you have some inclusion criteria, but did you also have exclusion criteria?
Well, the exclusion criteria were almost the reverse of the inclusion criteria. I would say just really people who could not fulfill the inclusion criteria, or on the day were ill or were deemed not really fit to spend extra time, and having questionnaires administered or interviewed.
And
so a lot of the inclusion, exclusion, or criteria could be gained from the medical notes, but on the event, if someone appeared much more symptomatic than they were described in their medical notes, they would not have been included. And you'll see from the figures, a small number of patients were excluded. Some on that basis, some just decided and they didn't want to take part. Yeah.
Because now you talked about the numbers. Because when I looked at that, because you talk about 215 patients, And then in the table, you have 208. So I was wondering what would happen to these 7?
To have 8 people removed. I think there was a error in whether this was 215 or 214. So I am not sure. Andrew, are you?
No, I think
it was 214, and it was along the way has for the figures get rounded up to 215. It was actually 214.
Oh. But I think that those few who dropped out were the ones who refused to take part in the study. So the 215 were identified from the waiting list, and then the handful said no thank you, or were too sick to be involved.
Yeah.
So 208 went forward to initial data collection.
Yes. And then in the remaining you had 128, and so I wrote, when I read it, I thought, oh, this is very good. But one of my colleagues online asked, how do you think it affects your results that you lost nearly 40% of the patients during follow-up?
Yes. Well, the loss to follow-up was actually, let me see, I've got the figures here, a significant, 5% of patients actually died in the first 30-day period.
Yeah.
A further 44 died in the time to 7 years. Now, we have analysed was this more males or females, and in actual fact, the group itself had 8% males, 20% females. So it was hard to say that you couldn't statistically significantly say more females than males died. I don't know, Andrew, did we look at any difference in the characteristics between those who survived?
We did very much try to look into what were the associations with people dying, and in fact that there was another cohort study that we've also been involved in where we did a similar thing as well, and didn't really show any relationship with locus of control. So
no, I think the numbers were too small.
Yeah. So I think it's problematic to some extent that we lost a number of people, but it hasn't brought in a systematic bias to the results as far as we can make out.
No, I think if you see the people who declined is not so big. You know, people sort of stayed in the study if they did not die, but I think it's quite impressive that people stay. Yeah. I had a question also in methods. Why did you pick the short form 46?
Well, the short form 36, as you know, is a generic measure of quality of life, and it is widely used, developed by the RAN group in the States, and has been translated and used in many countries. And at that time, it seemed to be the gold standard, if I could use that term, for measuring quality of life. So that was really, I was looking for a measure that was generic because I was measuring symptoms by patients' accounts. I was also interviewing patients and getting some qualitative data on people's health. So I wanted a measure of quality of life that could be quantified and used in analysis that was robust and validated scale. Mm-hmm. So I think these were the main reasons. It also has been used in cardiac populations, so there is comparative data. That was useful to place my cohort of patients against the other published data. and you could see where we didn't, not in this paper, but the lower quality of life scores in other cardiac populations were reflected in the population in this study. And so that was why I selected it.
Would you now take the short form 12, for example, instead of the 36?
Well, at that time, the SF12 was just really being validated. Actually, I have subsequently looked at the SF 36 has 36 questions measuring 8 domains of health. The SF12 has 12 questions measuring 2 domains of health, mental health and physical health, which do represent the major variation in quality of life from the two scales. It would have been more useful, but or quicker for patients. And at that time, it really was just being developed. And as this was part of a doctoral piece of work, I was, enthused to do what I thought was the most robust measure. But because I knew for the SF12 you could extract the data anyway, you had the SF12 embedded within the SF36.
Andrew, what would you nowadays choose? Sorry.
I would be inclined, I think, to go for the shorter form. So the SF12. I think my experience elsewhere is that the more you can simplify, the more likely you are to keep your patients engaged in your study. So if you can have, the health locus of control, as I said, is a short questionnaire. The SF12 is a short questionnaire. The more you can make the process simple for the people that we're working with, the patients, then I think that's better. So I would, I think, now go for the SF12. As Grace said, that encapsulates the 2 areas of particular interest for this study.
And then I have a question coming in from Italy too on these questionnaires, the health locus of control and short form 36, they have been administered in these 3 times. So baseline, 1 year, 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Okay, I was just wondering about, because you talked a little bit about ethics, did you need to apply for additional ethical approval for the 7-year follow-up?
Yes, we had at the 1-year follow-up asked informed patients that we were planning to do a further follow-up, and if anybody was not willing to be contacted to inform us at that stage. We were not taking ethics approval at that time, and all people were willing to be contacted. When we started the 7-year follow-up, we went back to the ethics committee with our application amended for this extended follow-up, and our first step was to ensure the survival of the cohort before we proceeded. So ethical approval was given on the basis that we checked before contacting patients that they had survived.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. So if we move on to results. I'm sorry, I have a bad echo, so I'll just see how it goes. So if we move,
I think it's worth pointing out.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I was going to say it's worth pointing out, Teenie, that in Scotland we've got very good health records, so it's very easy to follow patients to see if they have died. We've got one health index number which covers all acute and primary care episodes for every patient, so it's very, very easy to ascertain that we're not trying to contact people who have passed away.
Yes, that would be very distressing for the family.
For the family.
Yeah. So if we move to the results, a few people are wondering actually about the comparison with the Monica data, because one person asked me was that there is a difference between the studies. Why did you choose that data?
Sorry, Tini, your voice became a little bit unintelligible there.
So the Monica data, so you compared your data with the Monica study, and one of the question askers, asked me why they chose the Monica study, because the population is quite different in the study.
Well, the population is quite different, but it was based in the same geographical area. So there was a big Monica study in the west of Scotland, and obviously it's looking at cardiac health. So it was the same type of outcome that Monica was interested in, cardiac health, and it was based in the west of Scotland. So in many ways it was quite comparable, and it was readily available to us.
And you really had the real data?
We were able to get the from the Monica people age and gender match, not any other data from them, but whether they had cardiac disease or not, and so we could match our population, a cardiac population, and say that they were of similar age and gender mix as the Monica population.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and I think it's very nice if you have actual population that you can compare with. Yeah.
It was just a simple thing.
You go, Grace. Okay, so I'll go to table 3 with the Monica data, actually.
Yeah.
And here you present both the mean and the median. So why do you present both?
Monica reported mean for health locus of control, and strictly speaking, because this is not a continuous scale, median is a more appropriate way of reporting those data. But Monica had never done that, but since we only had their reported data, not their raw data, we couldn't establish what the median is.
Yes, yeah, and then it's really correct to have both, because you wanted to do the median.
Yeah.
And one of the people online asked, you described that you don't have data at all 3 time points for every patient, so that you have pair the data. Can you explain this a little bit more?
Yes, so for instance, some people would have, we had a questionnaire from pre-surgery, not at 1 year follow-up, but again at 7 year follow-up. So we don't necessarily have all the data for some people we had at 1 year post-surgery and pre-surgery, but not for the 7 year follow-up. So we didn't have a complete data set for every patient.
Yeah.
But these sort of gaps or missing data were a small percentage of the overall data set. Andrew, you get the figures of how much complete sets there were.
I'm just trying to remember. From my memory, I think we had 111 complete sets, but I'm trying to remember the number off the top of my head, and I can't do that.
Yeah. But for the analysis you did not take anybody out that maybe had one missing.
No.
So you did not you did not do analysis only on people who had all 3.
No, we didn't. We did where we could do analysis on pairs of data, we did, and where then we excluded them. If we didn't have those data, then they weren't included. But where we could use them, we did use them. So we tried to maximize the use of the data.
Yes, yeah. So I was looking at these two figures, Andrew, and I had a little bit difficulty understanding with the 0 and the minus and the plus. So
Yeah.
can you explain?
Yes. So the 0 point is so each one of these bars is representing the change in locus of control for a particular patient. So if we look at figure 1, you can see that 7 patients had no change in their locus of control between
So
pre-surgery and immediately post-surgery.
Yeah.
Next to that, there's 11 patients whose locus of control increased by 1, so it became slightly more external. 1 patient, their locus of control increased by as much as 11 points between pre-surgery and post-surgery, so in that 1-year period. So at every point, there's a dotted line which represents no change, and then each bar represents numbers, so individual patients with their absolute change. Yeah.
And the more you move to the right, the more external locus of control you have.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see that in the rehabilitation period, the period between 1 year after surgery and 7 years after surgery, even looking at the graph, you can see that people were moving back towards a more internal locus of control on the whole. But there are some people who, even in that period, became much more external. 2 people whose locus of control was 7 points more external.
And were you, because someone is that because of the surgery, or do you think there are some confounders?
Well, the only data we collected was about cardiac symptoms. So we have reported the relationship between angina symptoms and breathlessness, but what we don't know, and what could be a confounding thing, is other health problems that emerged as part of their life over those 7 years, and potentially, yes, that there could be other health issues which were contributing to this change as well, but we didn't have those data.
No. And how about rehab? Were they all in rehab?
Well, looking at the literature, we would very much expected rehab to be linked to a more internal health locus of control.
Yeah.
Because that's what the evidence seems to suggest. Those people have greater internal health locus control, tend to do more health promoting activity, including engaging with rehab. And we didn't actually find that strong relationship. Now, that might be the size of our sample, but it might be something else going on which we couldn't explain. It's an observation, and we can't necessarily give a reason for that observation at the moment.
No.
That was an unusual finding, I think.
Yeah. Because what also struck me was the smoking and the alcohol. That still so many people smoke, but still I would expect another relationship with smoking and locus of control, but you did not find.
And again, we didn't find that relationship either. And I wonder whether, when you've got a group who are already quite unwell, they're needing cardiac surgery, when they're quite established as a group of smokers in many ways, whether that kind of masks a relationship between smoking behavior and locus of control. Because again, from the literature, you'd expect that people with more internal locus would be less likely to be smokers. And I think if we just went out to the population and took 200 people off the street, we might find a different relationship between smoking and a health locus of control than we found within this particular cohort of people with undergoing cardiac surgery.
Yeah, because I can imagine that if you think you're in control of your own health, you would just stop smoking. But that's not how it was in this population.
It wasn't, no. Grace was just wanting to come in with a comment there, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
Just to mention the fact a power calculation for calculating the sample size was undertaken using estimated changes in the SF36 scores. Now, they are clearly different profile of scores from the range of scores and the type of scores in the health locus of control. So there is a possibility that for issues such as smoking, which maybe half of the sample were smoking, and the numbers left to make any association, we are underpowered to make strong, statistically significant associations.
Mm-hmm. Did you do a power
analysis? So just say a word about the statistical power.
Grace, did you do a power analysis in the beginning?
Yes, we did, and it was powered on the SF36 scores, not powered on the health locus of control.
I think what Grace was saying was it was powered for one outcome, which was SF36, changes in SF36, because so many of the people were already smokers. That maybe meant it was underpowered to detect changes in either sort of related to smoking behaviour or health locus control change.
Yeah,
because it wasn't powered for that initially.
I understand. Yes. I now have to say, we don't get any questions through Google Hangout, only through the email. So if people send questions to Google Hangout and are very angry with me that I sort of ignore them, that's not the case. I just don't get them on my screen. So if you want to mail, it's fine. And otherwise, mail them later and we will answer them post-mortem, I would say. So don't be angry if I don't get your questions, because they don't come much. But I have a lot coming in through mail. I have several coming in through mail, and I have a lot here, and we only have 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So I would like to have some comments in the discussion, because I have some questions there. You did not find any relationship between locus of control and mortality. And or morbidity, I have to say. And it could be power issue, of course. But on the other hand, other people did. So how do you explain that?
Yeah, again, I don't know if this is down to the fact that we have got a group who are already very unwell before they entered the study. So I think maybe, again, if we took 200 people off the street, we might well find that relationship. But because we're taking people who are already, quite unwell, that maybe needs a much larger sample to show that relationship, to give the necessary power for those calculations to show a relationship.
Yeah.
I think the scores were sort of condensed, they weren't distributed across the whole scale. So in that kind of context, the variability will affect your ability to detect major changes. If they're all kind of static, I'd have a low health status.
And can you? Because I didn't really get that point. Why do you think the population is like too sick, like Andrew said, or is it too little variation?
Sorry, could you say that question?
The too sick.
Yeah.
I heard. Well, I think the previous studies that showed changes were in a healthier population, which I would expect the range of scores to be spread out. So if you're dealing with a group whose scores are condensed to one end of the spectrum, statistically that will behave differently than a normal distribution. You're dealing with a skewed score of a low health status at one end of the spectrum. And therefore in that situation, the interpretation of the data or changes is then more difficult. So it could be related to the distribution of data.
But if you then...
as opposed to a normal distribution in a normal population.
Yeah. But then if you claim in the beginning that a claim, but just hypothesize that you can change the locus, or it can change. Are there any interventions that we could do to move people to a more, internal, that they take care of themselves? Are there any interventions that can help?
Certainly in other fields, there have been interventions to try and improve locus of control, to bring it more internal. Sort of psychological therapies, so CBT type interventions have been shown to give people a more internal locus of control. So I think in terms of thinking about the implications for this in clinical practice, that there's two things. One is to say, well, should we be trying to give people a more internal locus of control, give them a greater ability for their own life and feeling of their own responsibility, but secondly, to be aware that there is this this component of well-being or of psychological behavior that could impact on people that we don't really pay much attention to ordinarily in our dealings with patients. So yes, certainly, I think that there has been work to change locus of control, and we might say, well, that's worth doing for cardiac rehabilitation patients.
Yeah, but it does not help to say you have to take responsibility. You have to do something probably more, like behavioral therapy. Yeah.
Yes. Well, when I say take responsibility, have that belief that you have more control over the things that affect your life. So certainly not in a blaming way, but helping people understand that that they are part and parcel of their health sometimes.
And then now a Google Hangout question comes in from Michela Luciani from Milano. And she asked, do you reckon the nurse skill set is enough to take care of this aspect properly? To change, to for example, address locus of control. Do the nurses have enough skills to do that?
I think Grace wanted to respond to that.
Yeah. So the question is inquiring if the nurse skill set is able to address some of the issues of health locus of control.
Yeah.
And provide interventions to move people to a healthier internal state. I think if you nurses, and I'm sure do, understand human behaviours and human experiences of their health and the world at large, it's something that you are in touch with your patients. The extent to which people explore beliefs and why people have certain behaviours, I think nurses are well equipped to undertake these dialogues with patients and offer advice either directly in partnership with the patient family, or to be able to refer them to appropriate practitioners or professionals if there are specific areas of specialist intervention that are indicated. Andrew, would you like to add?
I think that's true. I think the big issue, certainly within the UK, that we see for nursing addressing this is time. We're getting patients now who are coming through clinical areas much faster, spending less time in contact with nurses, and nurses are relatively more busy than they were 10 or 20 years ago. So although I think nurses do have these skills and are very aware of psychological and social components of health, they're actually often just trying to deliver purely sort of medical interventions because of staffing numbers and busyness. And so we need to use the skills that we do have.
So for you, it's not a matter of skills, but it's more time and opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, against that, I think realistically, if we don't use those skills, then the new nurses who are coming up through the profession won't get the chance to learn them because they'll not see them in practice. So we will become de-skilled over time. You know, most of your skills you learn not at your pre-registration university or college of nursing, but you learn them from spending time with experienced nurses who show you how to do the job.
Yes.
But if those experienced nurses can no longer do the job, then they're not showing the more junior nurses how to do it in future. So we will become de-skilled.
Yeah.
Is there to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. That's good. I think you have the trust to and you also write that in the implications for practice that we could look at this concept and try to change or help patients to change behavior and have also attention for this, that or have like a feeling for this is a patient who really puts the reason or the control out of himself or not. So I think still, like I said in the beginning, and like you also said, that it is an important and interesting concept that we sort of lost in nursing, but I think it's a very interesting article to see how we can probably use it better in our daily practice. So I would like to give you the final opportunity. If you would like to say something that we need to more look into this concept or into your paper, is there something you want to share with the listeners and the YouTube watchers?
I don't know if Grace has got anything to say before I say anything. Any last thoughts, Grace?
Yes, maybe just want to sort of reinforce a point of the value of cohort research design. If you plan to be a researcher for a long time, it is a good opportunity to set up a program of research that will allow you to rich data, have the time to actually go back and things you've forgotten about or whatever, a bit of thinking time. And also which is not presented in this paper, the study was complemented with a qualitative arm of interviews on patients' views of their health. So together, a mixed method design alongside a cohort design gives you a very rich insight into the area that you're studying. And thank you very much, Tina, for the opportunity to talk to you and your audience about our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Andrew, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say, similar to Grace, you know, I think the value of longitudinal study is great, and it's well worth the effort in setting it up and following it through. And I think, you know, it's important to be really looking at these psychological aspects of care and thinking about what they mean for us as clinical practitioners, as nurses, because often we can get caught up with you know, measures which are brought down on us from healthcare systems or government or whatever, and undervalue the nursing aspect and the psychological aspect and the social aspect in terms of our patients' well-being. Opportunity to carry out research like this is really useful and hopefully beneficial to the patients as well.
And it also gives the patients a voice, because it's a big part of people's lives, this type of healthcare issue.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm very happy that you know, got all this energy and follow the people for a long time and write it up in a publication, and also discuss with us or with me and the people online and answer questions. So thank you very much for being in this journal club, and well, hope to see you around at conferences and submit a lot of papers to our journal.
Thank you, Tini.
Okay,
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.